So, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a 1974 film directed by Tobe Hooper. It is probably one of the most iconic horror films ever made, and has been referenced in countless pieces of media, and even getting its own remake in 2003 by Platinum Dunes. But I want to take a look at the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and really just take a look at it. Why is this such a good horror film? Well, and I kind of hope to answer that in today's video. Now, of course, I've already talked about the Texas Chainsaw series in the past before. I reviewed Texas Chainsaw 3D and kind of into depth about who Ed Gein was. For those who did not watch that video, Ed Gein was basically who influenced Leatherface. His horrific crimes kind of influenced who Leatherface would be. Because Ed Gein, he was a grave robber and also a suspected serial killer. Now, he was only confirmed to have killed 2 people, but it's been suspected that he did kill more. But what really stood out about him to most people who read about him was him making household objects out of human remains. And then, of course, his, kind of fucked up childhood, because the guy was horrifically abused. That's not to excuse anything, but just to kind of give some insight on it. But the news of Ed Gein's crimes really kind of influenced a lot of horror media. From Buffalo Bill, The Silence of the Lambs, to Norman Bates in Psycho, and of course, Leatherface in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, what is this film about? Well, that's kind of what we're here to take a look at. So, Texas Chainsaw Massacre begins on a little summer day. 5 friends are heading into Texas to check a graveyard to kind of make sure that, these graves aren't being tampered with. In the car, we of course have Cook, Pam, Jerry, Sally, and her brother Franklin. They're checking in on Sally's grandparents' graves to make sure that they weren't tampered with, because there's a lot of news that's coming out about how quite a few graves were being tampered with, and this is kind of this is something that did happen in real life. Ed Gein kind of would dig up corpses and take various parts from back to his home. And this probably would have started arousing suspicion because, you can tell when something's been dug up, before. And then, of course, it's during this time that the group picks up a hitchhiker, played by, Edwin Neal. There is something seriously wrong with this guy. He doesn't really seem to be completely there. But he goes on about his family and the slaughterhouse and, how the Goodways used to be. Then he cuts himself. They eventually kick him out because he cuts Franklin, but he wipes some blood on the car. They go to a gas station to get cleaned off, only for that not to get cleaned off, and for the gas station clerk to say that there's not really much gas, and that there'll be some later. They obviously made plans to go check out Sally's old childhood home, but he wants them, maybe just don't go there. Most folk don't like trespassers. And he has a very valid point. And then, of course, they just kind of ignore him. Obviously, they go check out this old place, but Cook and Pam go to a local quarry, and eventually find a house, and along the way, where Cook wants to go see if they can borrow some gas. So he heads into the house And, it just looks like a normal Texas home. He's got, trophies lying around, pelts on the wall. This generally feels like a normal Texas home. That's until he accidentally stumbles. When he looks up, he sees a man wearing a mask, and then gets hit in the head with a hammer. This is our introduction to Leatherface, the main antagonist of the film and the series. Now, in this film, he's really just called Leatherface. Jedediah, I think, came out as a name for him in 3D. So we'll refer to him that in subsequent videos. But for now, Leatherface, it's just him. Then of course we have Pam. Pam's looking for Kirk. And so she goes into the house, and that's kind of when she stumbles into the chicken room. There's a bunch of bones everywhere too, which is absolutely horrifying. Now she tries to make her way out of the room, only for Leatherface to open the door and scream at her. As he tries to run out of the house, he grabs her, places her on a meat hook, and starts butchering Kirk. Which is probably absolutely one of the most horrific parts of the film, because, she's still alive for a bit, and has to watch her boyfriend get massacred. Then, of course, there's really only 3 characters left. Jerry, Sally, and Franklin. They've been waiting for these two to really come back, and when there's no sign of them, Jerry heads back to search for them. He ends up stepping into the house, and he opens this freezer, which reveals that Pam is sort of still alive. I don't know if she was dying or not, but she just kind of reanimates for a moment, scares the crap out of him, and we have this loud industrial noise, and then Leatherface just pops right out and hits him in the head with a hammer, and kind of sort of has a bit of a, moment where he's just unsure about what he's doing. Gunnar Hansen did a really good job with playing Leatherface. He's a sympathetic character. He's not like Jason, Michael, or Freddy, where they sort of know what they're doing, or they just don't care what they're doing. But Leatherface doesn't really know what he's doing. He's been molded to become a serial killer, and is essentially terrified of people. Now, I'm saying we'll see more of that later on in the film and such. But of course, it's really just Sally and Franklin, and, the two decide to look for their friends. Night is fastly approaching, which already makes it dangerous because they're in an unfamiliar area at night. And of course, Franklin starts to hear something, and that's when we're introduced to Leatherface again, who butchers Franklin. Sally is able to get away, but Leatherface chases after her. Sally runs into the Sawyer house, tries to climb upstairs, but finds 2 people up there. And unfortunately, they're not much help, because, they're both dead. Leatherface knows she's in the house, and so she's forced to jump out a window. That's when she's able to run back to the gas station, where she meets the cook. Leatherface is nowhere to be seen. And, okay, maybe that's a happy ending. The cook can help her, only for it to be revealed that the cook isn't exactly a good guy. So he basically kidnaps Sally and starts driving her somewhere. Along the way, he finds the hiker, who we encountered earlier in the film. Kind of yells at him, and the two make their way back to that was a familiar house. They went back to the Sawyer house. Instead, the cook finds out that Leatherface ruined the door and calls him his brother. Well, to the hitchhiker. After berating Leatherface, they kind of tie up Sally and kind of have her for dinner. So basically, for those who really don't know, the cook, played by the late and great Jim Sidow, was Drayton Sawyer. His name is not mentioned until Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but these are a group of brothers. Drayton, I think, Drayton's pretty much the oldest, and kind of, I guess, the father of the group. He's very stern with his brothers, and kind of abusive at times. Leatherface is the youngest. You know, it's also very much implied that Leatherface he's mentally impaired. Now, obviously, this part of the film has not aged particularly too well, which, yeah, I think we can all admit that understanding of special needs was not as good as it was back then compared to today. So, yeah. But, yeah, Leatherface is often abused by his family and kind of molded to become a killer. This idea is explored further in subsequent films. But, yeah, for this one, Leatherface is kind of used as a guard dog for the house. Then, of course, we notice he has a different mask. Leatherface is implied to have some sort of personality disorder, as he's seen wearing different masks, which kind of imply that he takes on the personality of whichever mask he has. He has a pretty woman mask, a killer mask, and I think he had something else. We obviously seen this again in The Next Generation, where he has a grandma mask and a woman's suit that he has, plus his normal mask. So yeah, the series has kind of played around with Leatherface having an identity crisis and such. But yeah, so they bring down Grandpa, who is confirmed to be alive, and 124 years old. They basically call him the best killer there ever was. And so they spend quite a bit torturing Sally, which this is probably one of the most horrifying parts of the film, not just in storytelling, but with production. Honestly, they kind of differ, but there's been a lot of talks about how this filming took forever. You can see it in, I think it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Shocking Truth. But there's a lot of behind-the-scenes footage where they talk about the making of this movie, and it's really clear that this was kind of hell on everyone. It only got so bad that Gunnar Hansen, they were trying to cut out Sally. He got frustrated, and they actually cut her for real. Because they could not get the shot, and he just wanted it to be done with. Not to mention, he also was hell on that set because, well, they couldn't clean up Leatherface's costume, so it reeked like crap. Then there's the props. Texas heat. Yeah, Texas gets really hot. I know not myself because I've been there. So yeah, production-wise, that part was kind of hell. So they eventually decide they want to kill Sally. And she eventually escapes because they try getting Grandpa to kill her. And the family starts to argue because, well, Nevins thinks that Drayton doesn't really do much. And it causes a little fight. Sally kind of escapes, and Nevins and Leatherface chase after her. Nevins is, well, gleefully playing with her, slashing her back, because he takes pride in being sadistic. And he's eventually hit by a truck. He didn't see it coming, and that's kind of his role in the series up until the TCM game from a few years back. And a little cameo in TCM 2, and being a minor character in TCM 1, Leatherface. trucker, absolutely horrified and kind of seeing Sally being chased by Leatherface, kind of decides to help. He throws a punch at Leatherface, which causes him to kind of cut his knee. And that's also another part where production hell kind of goes in, because they had a metal plate in Gunner's leg to kind of, well, prevent him from cutting into his leg, but it got so hot that he actually felt like he got cut, and you can actually hear that in the movie. But there's a truck that passes by, and Sally's able to hop on it and escape from Leatherface. The trucker, I think it's implied that he died in, I think, 3D or so. I don't know, I just remember I heard that somewhere. But yeah, so Sally is able to escape, and with that, that's kind of an end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, of course, the question is, how good is this movie? Is it good? Is it watchable? Should you watch it? I personally say it's pretty good. I'd say, actually, it's really good. It's honestly a fantastic film, but there are some issues with it, such as the fact that, yeah, some parts have not aged all too well. And then just the fact that, well, you could also probably argue, depending on who you are, you can also probably argue that it isn't gory enough, or it might be too much. In fact, this film got into a lot of controversy because of its content. It kind of was a video nasty in the UK, and it's gotten quite a lot of criticism for, you know, its violence and such. But all in all, I still think it's a good movie. I think the acting was good. But overall, I think it's a really good film. Despite any criticisms I have with it, I really did enjoy this one. And I personally recommend this one to folk who have not seen it yet. Then, of course, honestly, keep your expectations accordingly. Mainly just because, while this is a good film, I feel like a lot of people would probably expect it to have a lot of violence and macabre themes in it. When reality, most of the kills aren't even as graphic, but they kind of they force you to use your imagination. It's not something like, you know, Saw or Hostel. At least not yet, anyways. But I'd also look into an analysis of the film. The themes that it presents, which I didn't really cover in this video, are honestly really good and really make it a very smart movie. Someone just simply casting it off as just another, you know, horror movie with a bunch of dumb characters and the survival girl archetype. But they just forget that beneath all of the horror is a movie that had something to say, and I think that's one of the coolest things about it, is that it genuinely actually had something to say. But that's all I really have for today's video. And of course, like always, I will be back with another video next time. And I will be back talking about, you know, probably more of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. So until then, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful night.